Hey, in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about why hustle culture is traumatizing you. So this is a very popular way of living these days. It gets pushed a lot. And I used to really be into this kind of hustle, pushing, grinding type of mindset. But as I've grown and in intelligence and in consciousness, I understand that this is a very, very unhealthy way to live your life, right? So I just want to break this down for you. If you are one of these people who kind of always about hustling and pushing themselves all the time, and why this is probably going to cause you a lot of problems further down the line. So first of all, what is hustle culture? Hustle culture is quite popular. If you follow a lot of like self-improvement channels and this sort of thing, you'll see there's this idea that always gets pushed, that you've always got to push harder, keep working, keep grinding. You might have to work 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day, get up at 4 a.m. every morning and just push like a crazy person. Right? Don't stop till you get to your goal, right? I used to be a big advocate of this, right? I thought it was good, I thought it was healthy. But in this video, I want to show you why that way of living your life is going to literally traumatize you. In order for me to explain this further, we need to get into a bit of like neurophysiology and the nervous system. So obviously we all have bodies, we all have nervous systems. Now, your nervous system is literally who you are. This controls your thinking, how you act, how you behave, how you show up, right? It's always being expressed through your body, through your nervous system, right? I would also say that real change happens on this level. If you don't change on the level of the nervous system, then your change is not really real change. It's not sustainable. So to really change, this is the level we've got to go to. And bringing a spiritual aspect into it, when we grow spiritually, it has to be done through the body. It has to be done through the nervous system. If you have a traumatized nervous system, then you can't evolve spiritually. It's not going to happen, right? This is probably why a lot of ancient spiritual practices like yoga, kundalini yoga and pranayamas and all these type of breathing exercises, we were working with the body, right? Because they understood that you need to have a healthy nervous system. But in this hustle culture that we live in now, like grind at all costs, you ain't going to have a healthy nervous system. So let me get into some science for you. So there's this idea from kind of trauma healing. It's called window of tolerance, right? I'll put up an image on the screen. And this window of tolerance kind of has three main sections. The middle section is when you're kind of, well, let's say regulated, when you're feeling good, right? So that's you when you're being your authentic self, when you're relaxed and calm. Everybody experiences this healthy part regularly, often I would say. But then we have, above that, we have the fight or flight response. That's when you're feeling anxious. That's when you're feeling stressed. That's when you're pushing too much, right? You've left that healthy space of your authentic self and now you've gone into fight or flight of stress. Now, we are designed to access that part of our physiology from time to time. We need to, right? But what happens with people who are hustling all the time, they can get chronically stuck there. You're doing it with your mind, you see. We can actually use our minds, to push our bodies past what they're capable of. Also, traumatized people have a very small window of tolerance due to everything that's happened to them. So they easily get activated. They easily step outside of their window of tolerance. On the lower end of the spectrum, we have, it's called hypoarousal. This is when people freeze or shut down, right? An example of this could be you've got to give a public speech and you just kind of freeze. That's like a very deep parasympathetic response, right? That isn't really what I'm going to get into here, but it's important to understand that some people just freeze, right? Again, you can't do anything in that situation. Another example of this might be you go to approach an attractive girl you want to talk to, you just freeze, right? Or even just seeing her makes you freeze, right? You've dropped down into that kind of, that lower end of the spectrum. Because your window of tolerance is so low, you easily get activated. When you're activated, you either go into fight or flight or shut down and freeze, right? So just begin to recognize this, but it's important for you to expand your window of tolerance. in order for you to be able to really handle life, in order for you to really push, right, in a healthy way, you need to have a healthy window of tolerance. I would say some people naturally may have a more expansive window of tolerance. If you've got good genetics, if you were maybe raised in a very good way and you didn't have much trauma, you would potentially have an expansive window of tolerance. You can handle things, right? You can handle triggers. You can handle maybe working hard without overstressing yourself, right? But if you have an expansive window of tolerance, you would never actually feel like you were really pushing and grinding. You would feel like you were going quick or working hard, but it wouldn't go into that stress zone, right? Which I think too many people are getting into. Because, like I said, we've got this beautiful mind which allows us to mentally push. And the problem is we push too far. And in the long run, that makes you sick, because when you spend too long in that fight or flight zone, you're releasing all kinds of harmful chemicals and hormones into your system. When you develop and expand your window of tolerance, which I'll get to at the end of the video, you can handle more negativity better, right? You don't get triggered as much. Or even if you get triggered, you can process it. It doesn't send you into fight or flight or freeze or shut down, right? If you're an anxious person, then your window of tolerance is probably quite small. And then any little thing can just set you off, right? So begin to recognize and see and acknowledge your own capacity. Capacity is another word for it, right? We all have a capacity for what we can handle and what we can't. Developing yourself really is about building capacity. Because when you can handle more of the negative stuff, guess what? You can handle more of the good stuff, right? That's how it works. The negative stuff is there to train you, right? Build that capacity, build that window of tolerance, so then you can actually handle the good stuff, right? Because the good stuff's big as well, right? Just because you've got anxiety now and you think you want to experience success and great relationships, you don't have the capacity for it, right? So build the capacity by dealing with your anxiety. That's just one example, right? And the reason this traumatizes you is because many people have a lot of trauma anyway. All trauma is when you've had too many overwhelming experiences in your life, right? That's all it is. Every time you have an overwhelming experience, it can often stay with us. It gets stuck in our bodies, right? This is why so many of us pick up so many traumas in childhood. Because in childhood, we get overwhelmed by every little thing, right? You don't get the sweet that you want. You don't get to watch the cartoon that you want, and it overwhelms you and you cry your eyes out, right? So all these overwhelming experiences you've had throughout your life have been activating like survival stress in your body, which you probably didn't know how to discharge because it doesn't get talked about. And then it got stuck in your system, right? And that actually, when that energy gets stuck in your system, that's what limits your window of tolerance, right? But as we begin to kind of heal and release the trauma, naturally our window of tolerance expands, right? And we access more of ourselves. Your true self is in that window of tolerance. Your best spiritual self is in that window of tolerance, not when you're pushing and grinding, right? And something I learned from Chinese medicine and Qigong, I practice this a little bit, and it's that we have life force energy, which the Chinese call Qi. And in a healthy person, that should literally be in your dantian, they call it. It's like your lower belly. It should be there. But when you're traumatized and you're pushing too much and you're grinding and hustling, the energy ain't there anymore. It's like coming up. It's gone into your chest. It's in your head. It's not healthy, right? Our energy needs to be grounded, right? With that grounded energy, that's where we need to be working from. If you get to the stage where you feel like you're pushing too much, that's a massive clue that you've got to rein it back. Something that took me a long time to really get used to doing is taking time to just relax, right? Just watch a bit of TV. I used to think watching TV was like a waste of time. I used to be proud of the fact that I've never had Netflix, never watched Netflix, have no interest in it. I'd be proud of the fact, but now I understand that, you know what? You got to like give yourself space. You need to relax, like just chill out. That's the best way to work. Not these 14-hour, 16-hour days of constantly grinding, hustling. It's going to lead you to dysfunction, illness. Why do you think you hear these stories about people hitting 40 and 50 or quite young ages, relatively speaking, and having heart attacks, right? Because we've been grinding so hard, the system just couldn't take it anymore. The system literally malfunctioned, right? You don't want that to happen to you, right? Also, when you work within your capacity, you have better creativity, you have better ideas because you're at peace in your body. And before I get to explaining how you can begin to build nervous system capacity, I just want to say that for me personally, the more my consciousness has grown, the more my capacity has developed. So I think the two just work together. The more you develop your capacity, the more your consciousness is going to grow, right? Because the greater your consciousness, the more expansive, the more you can handle. Exactly the same way. So it's almost like as your consciousness expands, it's reflected in your nervous system with a greater capacity. Okay, so now let's get into how you can begin to develop a greater window of tolerance and a greater capacity. It's all about mindfulness, right? You've got to really start to practice these mindfulness muscles and become more aware of yourself. Stop switching off, right? Become aware of the times you get triggered. Right there, every time you get triggered is a clue for when you've stepped out of your window of tolerance, right? It's something that you don't have the capacity to deal with. When you can begin to recognize these small triggers on a microscopic level, you're going to get a massive clue for your limits, right? And then you could begin to regulate yourself so you stay within this window of tolerance. And every time you catch yourself getting out of that window, you can begin to bring yourself back, right? And what actually grows your window of tolerance is by you spending more time in it. So when you begin to recognize it and you stop going into fight or flight and grinding and you keep bringing yourself back, that actually grows it, right? And when it grows, guess what? You can do more shit. You can do better. You're more creative. You're more authentic, right? Like I said, everybody experiences this window of tolerance, their authentic self. It might be when you're at home just chilling out. It might be when you're with friends or family. But when you're around a lot of unknown people, you might step out of that window of tolerance. So begin to recognize it. And when you begin to recognize it, begin to slow things down, right? So if you catch something that triggers you, slow down. That's what mindfulness is. It's like, it's actually seeing what's happening in the moment. You get triggered, you slow things down, right? You don't fight the feeling, you don't resist it, you don't get too close to it. You just slow down, make space for it, right? And slowly over time, just dealing with little triggers, not massive triggers, little triggers, expand your window of tolerance as well, right? And I hope that you can expand it enough where you can work hard. The point of this video isn't to tell you that not to work hard. The point of the video is not to tell you to not to pursue your dreams and goals. The point of the video is to tell you that not to push too hard because you're a human being. You have certain limits, and the more you ignore them limits and keep pushing past them, then it might not go very well for you, okay? So I want you to be able to go for what you want, but first understand what your capacity is and work within that. When you do that, your capacity will expand you and you'll be able to do more and more and more, right? A final point, something that Jordan Peterson actually says, some of his best advice is stuff like, start with tidying your room. Why doesn't he tell you to go and start a business or do something extreme? Because you don't have the capacity for it, right? You've got to start where you are, slowly build the capacity, doing the small things, right? So I hope this video helped you out. I hope you can get off that hamster wheel of like grinding and hustling. It's hard at first. I found it difficult because you're so caught up in it. You've been programming yourself like this for probably a long time. If this is something that you were doing, and then to kind of chill out and slow down, it takes a bit of effort and a bit of consciousness, right? But that's the sweet spot of life. That's what I'm trying to get you to, that sweet spot, right? So that's all I've got to say in the video. I hope it made sense for some of you. I hope it helped some of you. But thank you for watching. God bless.